All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for navigating the graduate school and MBA process, presented by Middlebury Institute. Today, we'll be joined by a seasoned admissions officer to explore how to submit a successful application, discuss what admission officers look for, and review the different components of the admissions process. Our speaker for today's webinar will be Jill Stoffers. She's the Senior Director of Institutional Partnership at Middlebury Institute of International Studies, where she works to meet the enrollment goals of the Institute and employment goals for graduates. Jill has been an enrollment management professional for 25 years, starting her career at Portland State University in Oregon in undergraduate admissions. Her work has given her extensive experience in recruiting and admitting international graduate students. Please join me in welcoming Jill.
Hi, thanks. Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here with you today, and I'm excited to share some of what I've learned in this career in graduate and MBA admissions. We are going to let's see, get my slides going here. You already met me. I'm Jill. There's my email address in case you want to get in touch at some point, and I'll be sure to drop it in the chat at the end of the session as well. I'll just share a little bit about where I work now. So I work for the Middlebury Institute of International Studies, which is a graduate school in beautiful Monterey, California. We are a graduate school of Middlebury College, which has its main campus in Vermont and then campuses in 36 sites in 16 countries around the world. And our graduate school in California trains people to become professionals in international security, sustainability, development, education, and language services. And we have a small campus environment on the beautiful coast of California. And what we're going to get into today is really looking at the application and admission process for MBA and graduate school programs. And so I'm going to just talk a little bit about what admissions offices are looking for in an application. I'll review the different application components like transcripts and letters of recommendation, and then we'll have a lot of time to take questions from you. But where I'd like to start this conversation is really thinking about your application as telling your story. We're trying to get from you sort of, what your interests are, what your passions, your motivations are, understanding your career goals at this stage in your life, and why you're going to be a good candidate for the program. So that's kind of the big picture of how your application can tell these stories and what they're designed for you to share in all the different components. And there are some questions that, people like me reading admissions applications and doing admissions interviews are looking for. And really, we're trying to answer, three basic questions. Is what we offer a good fit for what you want to do? Are you a good fit for the type of program we have? And can you do the work? And so, looking at that first question, is our program a good fit for your career goals and what you're looking for? So, students will be telling us in their application kind of their hopes and dreams and where they want to go. And we want to see, is our program and everything associated with the program going to get you there? So the program is more than just the courses and the degree you're going to earn, but it's, the faculty, the network, the alumni contacts, the internship programs or connections that the schools have. And just as an example, if you came to me and said, my career goal in 5 years after graduating from my degree, I want to be an international security professional, either working in the private sector or working for an international organization overseas. I would say great. And I could talk about all the features of our programs, networks that are going to get you to that career. However, if you came to me and said, I want to be the best global health professional in my county, we don't have a global health program. We have some things that are tangentially related, but we're not going to be the best fit for where you're telling me you want to go. So that's kind of question one that we're looking for. And then students often talk about in their applications, or at least you have in your minds, the type of program you're looking for, not just the degree program, but the size. Do you want to be in a really big graduate or MBA program, or do you want to be in a small one? Do you want to be in a city, or do you want to be, does it matter more where you can get the education you want versus where the location of that school is? Do you want to be in a really competitive program where you're competing against your peers? Or do you want to be in a program that's very cohort oriented where you're learning from each other? And so, each degree program, even within the same institution, can have sort of different characteristics. So we're going to be looking for those kinds of things as well. And then this is where most of us think about applying to graduate school is, can you do the work? So looking at your test scores, your grades, your experience. But really admissions officers are kind of looking for all of these things in your application. And let's take a look at each of the application components in more detail. And so we're going to start with the resume. Most graduate and certainly all MBA programs are going to require that you submit a professional resume that highlights your education, your experience, and your accomplishments. And it's really important that those things are clear on your resume. So, we want to see what degree you earned, when you earned it, or if you have professional certifications, that it's really clear. What school did you go to? What was the name of that degree? And when did you earn that? Same with your experience. That could be internship, professional experience, volunteer experience. But again, what was the organization? What were the dates that you were there? And what were some of your primary responsibilities or primary accomplishments? And then you certainly want to have an accomplishment section, and that can be edited depending on the programs you're looking for. Some programs are going to weigh quantitative skills. So if you won some kind of prize, a math prize, you might want to go into a little more detail about that. But that's where you could list things like prizes, were you on the honor roll, your affiliation with Beta Gamma Sigma for sure. Do you speak foreign languages? So thinking about what those accomplishments are and then maybe tailoring them for the different programs. For graduate and MBA programs, unless you've got 20 years of work experience, a one-page resume is going to suffice. So think about making a nice, concise resume that can fit on one page for that application. Most programs are also going to require essays. And I'm going to start where it sounds really obvious, but we get this question a lot. If a particular program is asking you to answer a particular prompt, you do need to answer that. I know many of you are applying to multiple programs and you want to cut and paste and recycle parts of your essays, and that's fine, but make sure that you're answering that prompt. If the school is asking you to describe your career goals, or if they're asking you to talk about your leadership experience, you've got to answer those prompts. You also need to stick to the word limits. If they ask for 500 words, don't submit 600. I know that sounds basic, but it's an important part of this process to see, can you even kind of follow basic instructions? And then it's the part about your essays, you have to think about striking a balance between really talking about the particulars of the program and how they fit with your goals and not copying just from our websites. And so what you might want to think about for this part is, think about where you are now in your life and where you want to be, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years after finishing the program, and just connect those dots. And so if you're thinking, okay, I'm finishing my degree here and I'm going to go in the Peace Corps, and then I want to come back and do this professionally, you could describe all the parts of that program that are going to get you there. So it could be that school has a program or scholarship for returned Peace Corps volunteers, or that a particular faculty member is in the professional association of the field that you want to go into, or that you've been reading the research of faculty and that faculty from this school or this program keep popping up. So it's really thinking about connecting those dots. Here's where I am now, and here's where I want to be, at the end of that program, and just connect those dots. And then I just want to caution against using artificial intelligence. We know students are using it. In some cases, it's pretty obvious to us when they are. We want your essays and your interview and everything to seem like a coherent and authentic package. And so we are really looking for authenticity, and that's going to be something to really think about in that essay process. And so I want to talk about your letters of recommendation as well. And I have a couple of slides on this, but I love to think about the letters of recommendation as an opportunity for you to round out your story. What are some things that someone who knows you well can tell us that are not obvious to us from your transcripts, resume, and test scores? And so think about things like your motivation. Maybe your grades or your transcripts are going to be, 3 or 4 years old by the time you're applying to grad school. So how is it that you came to wanting to do this kind of work? What is your motivation at this point in your life for this career path? Recommenders can talk about your perseverance, your leadership, your teamwork ability, how you overcome adversity. So think about those recommenders really rounding out different parts of your application that talk about you as a person and why this program is a great next step for what you want to do. It's important to think carefully about who can write these recommendations and who could provide these insights about who you are now. So in some cases, I'll have students who graduated a number of years ago from college, and let's say, well, I could get a professor to write me a letter, but I took their class 5 years ago. If you've kept in touch with that person and they've really sort of mentored you along your path, that might be a great person. But it might be better to think about someone who knows who you are now, who can really comment on why this program fits with what you want to do next. And there are some things you can do to set your recommenders up for really great recommendations. So, even if you know this person pretty well, share a copy of your resume and share why this particular program fits with your goals. Give them a bullet point list of your accomplishments. Maybe, you earned A's in their courses or you did a great project. Just remind them of the things that you did in your relationship to your time with them. Give your recommenders enough time to write their letters. People are busy, and a good letter takes some time and thought. And then give them really clear instructions on how to submit it. Is it a form? Is it a PDF that gets emailed to somebody in the admissions office? But give them clear instructions on how and when the deadline is to submit it. Also, if there's a style, some schools are going to give you a format, or like, please have your recommender talk about these 3 things. Or is it just a free form letter where they can talk about whatever? So give them whatever kind of instruction to set them up to present the best letter for you. If you're not sure if they've sent it, check in and remind them of the deadline to submit. And then, you might have this great recommender who just writes the best letters. You might want to ask them, hey, how many times can I ask you write a letter for me? Just caution over using one particular recommender. And the next couple slides, transcripts and test scores, are going to sound kind of obvious, but we do get questions about these. So schools are generally going to be pretty clear about what's required in terms of submitting transcripts. In some cases, you can submit an unofficial transcript, maybe in the application process, but then if you get admitted, you have to submit an official one. Or in some cases, you might still be in school while you're applying, and so you'll have a transcript that doesn't show your degree earned. You'll definitely have to submit a final transcript with your degree earned. But just follow the guidance from the schools and pay attention to how they might be kind of slightly different in the requirements. And then test scores too. Schools are pretty clear about, do they require a GRE or a GMAT? At what point in the process? Can you submit your own, like your self-reported scores, or can you submit unofficial scores, or do they have to be the official scores? Where it can get a little tricky is if you're applying to a program that does not require test scores, you might be wondering, I took the GRE or the GMAT. I wonder if I should submit my scores. And I'll have you think about it like this. If submitting your scores would strengthen your overall application, go for it. If you're not sure, give it some more thought. So for example, if the degree program that you're looking for, has certain grade requirements, certain experience requirements, and you meet all of those, maybe it's prerequisites, coursework, leadership, you meet all of those and you meet them, really, you kind of exceed those minimum expectations. If your test scores are great, send them in. If your test scores are maybe not so great, that's when you might want to talk to an admissions officer and see if they'll give you some insight on, whether submitting them could actually hurt you. So that's where it gets a little bit tricky with those test scores, but generally schools are going to be pretty clear: required, not required, formats, points in the application process. The interview. The interview is another chance. These are part of my favorite parts of doing admissions, is really talking with prospective students. But it's another chance for you to share with the admissions committee who you are today, why you're motivated to join this program, and why it's a great fit for what you want to do next. So think through, kind of how you're going to tell that story, because you might jump into your interview and they might just say, hi, tell me about yourself. So be ready to kind of answer that question and sort of give that arc to someone. Prepare. You can definitely brainstorm questions you're likely to be asked in an admissions interview. Why are you interested in our program? Tell us, 2 or 3 features that really make this program stand out. They might ask you if you have any concerns about joining the program, or what other programs you're thinking about applying to. So just kind of brainstorm what questions they might ask you and have some answers jotted down and practiced for that. It's a good idea to treat an admissions interview like a job interview. So dress professionally, think about your space, your lighting, your background. If you're going to be in a space where it's hard, where you might have some distraction, or your internet might be choppy, just tell your interviewer that in advance. Just as an example, I do lots of interviews with prospective students who are currently serving in the Peace Corps. And sometimes they have to go to a public cafe in order to get good Wi-Fi, or they have to go on the roof of a building to get good Wi-Fi, or people are traveling and they're in a hotel and the Wi-Fi in the room isn't strong enough, so they're in the lobby. So just, set a little context for your interviewers. We're all people and we understand these things, but you can just give them some context. And finally, send a thank you email to the person who interviewed you. They'll definitely appreciate it. And I know I'm going to finish with this before we get to your questions, and this seems really obvious, but double check, triple check before you submit your application and your documents to your schools. I read lots of applications, and every year I read essays and letters for schools that are not ours because students just uploaded the wrong thing. So be careful when you're uploading your documents, maybe save the name of the school in your version. Um, turn off your track changes, make sure you're sending us the final versions of your documents. You may want to PDF them and upload them. I know it sounds basic, but those are really easy mistakes to make, especially if you're applying to multiple programs. And finally, I want to thank you for being here today. And if you would like to get information about programs or other things that the Middlebury Institute's doing, you can scan this QR code. And now I'm really happy to take your questions. Oops.
Thank you very much, Jill.
Yeah.
So we do have a question here, asking if there are some good resources that you have in mind for resume creation.
Yeah, if you're still in school, you can definitely, or if you have access to your career center for your undergraduate institution, your career center is going to have really good resume resources for you. I would start there. You could also ask someone to review your resume for you. If you're not, okay, I see you're not still in school. Sometimes alumni of schools have resources where you can access them as an alum of your school. But if you can talk to someone from a career advising center from where you were, that would be a good source. If you're currently working, you might ask your HR office if they have some good resumes they could share. They can take off the names of people so that it's kind of masked data, but human resources offices are going to see lots of applications and lots of resumes. So that might be a good place to look for some resume examples. That's a good question. What other questions have come in?
None at the moment. Let's see. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or add them to the Q&A section here. Happy to answer your questions.
We
Are there
are.
any other... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Just wondering if there are any other resources or anything like that that come to mind that you could probably share with the people in the audience.
Yeah, I mean, if you're applying to programs and they are requiring tests like GMAT or GRE, I would encourage you to just do some research about, there is strategy. So there's knowledge in taking the test and doing well, but there's also strategy in taking the test. And that changes from time to time. So I think it'd be good to read through what some of those strategies are. For example, if you don't know the answer to the question, is it better to guess or is it better to skip it? So, sometimes tests become adaptive. So if you answer something wrong, it might serve you up different types of questions. If you answer something correctly, it might serve you a slightly harder version. So just understanding a little bit about the test taking strategy, as well as the kind of knowledge you might need, to prepare to take the test. I know when I took the GRE, I got a big book and I was doing algebra and things I hadn't done in a really long time, just trying to practice so that I could answer the questions a little more knowledgeably than I could. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Someone actually asked if you could show that QR code again. Do you mind
Oh,
pointing to the
sure.
slide
Yep,
real
I can
quick?
share my screen again. Sure. Get that back up there. You might be seeing, are you seeing test slides again?
We are, yeah.
Okay, let's see if I can get back to the bottom one. Can you see the QR code?
Yeah, yeah, that'll
Okay,
work just
great.
fine.
I'll leave that there. Great. Okay.
And then somebody else had another question here, related to resumes.
Mhm.
Just asking, they've been working for a couple of years after undergrad. Does it make sense to collect and store resumes from professors in something like Interfolio?
I don't know what Interfolio is. Do you mean storing your professor's resumes?
Oh, sorry, they meant letters of recommendation.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that's a good question. We get asked a lot of questions about letters of recommendation, so I'm glad this is coming up. And students will offer, applicants will also often ask, is it better to have a recommendation from somebody, like let's say you work in an embassy, right? You're doing an internship in an embassy. And is it better to have a letter from the ambassador, right? The top person in that embassy? Or is it better to have a letter from your direct manager who might be a much more junior kind of person? I'm always going to say the person who knows you the best is going to write the best letter for you. An ambassador probably has a form letter, right? That they're going to use. And someone who knows you really well is going to be able to comment on kind of your day-to-day work. Are you a great colleague? Do you, contribute to the team in particular ways, like you keep meetings on track, or you circulate minutes in advance after a meeting, or you help with the agenda setting, or do you sort of look around and notice what needs to be done and just kind of step in and do it? So when you're thinking about who's going to write you that letter, I think the person who knows your day-to-day work is going to just have a lot more sort of tangible examples of who you are as a person and a worker. Um, you could, if you're thinking, okay, I might be graduating from college right now and I'm going to go to grad school in 3 or 4 years, should I start getting letters now? It's a hard question because the programs you're applying to may be asking you to submit very specific, having the recommenders comment on, like if you're applying to business schools, they might really be asking for someone who can comment on your leadership ability. And so if you're going to ask your history professor for a letter, it just might be more of a detail of, what grades you earned and kind of what you did in the course. So I don't know, it might be good just to ask your professors, hey, I'm going to apply to grad school in a couple of years. Can I reach back out to you and ask for a letter? And, how do you prefer me to do that? So sort of teeing them up might be useful. I'm not sure if having letters that are dated a couple of years old are going to be as useful. They wouldn't be as useful to me in reading an application. I'll say that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's see. Anybody else have any other questions they'd like to ask?
I like applicants to think about a few things when they're trying to pick a graduate school. If you can go visit the school, do it. It's going to give you a lot of insight to sort of what the community's like, how big the classrooms are. If you're trying to get a sense like, oh, I thought I wanted a really big program, but actually I want something where I know who the professor are and they know if I'm in class. So going to visit is going to give you a really good sense. You can also certainly try to reach out to alumni or current students of those programs. So Beta Gamma Sigma may have, Beta Gamma Sigma members who are at the programs you're thinking about enrolling in. So you could work through the Beta Gamma Sigma network to meet people. You could certainly also go on, searching on LinkedIn for people who are at your undergraduate institution and who are now at the graduate institution you're thinking about. But I would say trying to find some kind of personal connection where you can just learn a little bit more from someone what the program is like would be good. Visiting if you can. I know that's not always possible. And then every admissions office has people like me who read applications, conduct admissions interviews, talk to prospective students. Just see if you have specific questions, see if there's someone you can talk with about those questions. Generally, they exist. I'd say smaller private schools are going to be easier to find than larger state schools. But there are people in every admissions office who should be able to help answer questions for you.
Perfect. You mentioned leveraging your networks and your network at Beta Gamma Sigma. We have a wonderful way for you guys to connect with members at any time, and that's through Connect BGS. I'm just going to drop the link in chat here. But yeah, you can ask about programs and things that people may be partaking in already, and things of that nature. It's also just being able to leverage, the resources and stuff like that are available at Beta Gamma Sigma as well. We have tons of discounts on test prep services, and discounts and scholarships for graduate schools and admissions and stuff like that. So make sure you're always leveraging all the resources that you have at your fingertips.
Other questions? It's an exciting time to be thinking about next steps in professional career advancement. It's also a little bit intimidating, but I think it's an exciting time too.
I think, when you're about to start a new chapter of your life, it's always really exciting, right?
If people are willing, I'd love to hear kind of what you're thinking about. If you want to pop that into the chat, I'd be super curious to see what kinds of programs or what kind of fields or what kind of areas you're thinking about. Coming up.
Let's see. Oh, we got some people dropping some stuff in here.
Great.
Let's see. Someone said the MBA supply chain.
Oh yeah, great.
We have an individual asking, this one seems more like a BGS related answer.
Mhm.
In relation to the scholarships that are offered through Beta Gamma Sigma, we have a section on our website that McKenna dropped in there for the educational benefits. Those scholarships will be limited to those specific universities as you go through and look at those. But those are always available on our website 24/7, so you can hop in there anytime to take a look.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. We at the Middlebury Institute offer a 20% scholarship for Beta Gamma Sigma
Yeah.
members. We certainly recognize the hard work that it took to become a Beta Gamma Sigma member, and we honor that and guarantee scholarships for our in-person master's programs.
Another question dropped in here saying they graduate in the fall, hoping to start a master's in fall of 2026. When is the best time to start applying?
Yeah, that's a great question. Schools typically open their applications. So if you're looking at fall 26, they're probably going to open that application for admission sometime in fall 25. And then they're going to have clear deadlines. So a lot of MBA programs have deadlines even as early as summer, like July. So if you kind of have narrowed down the programs you want to look at, I'd start tracking what their applications are. And if they haven't yet posted their deadlines for the next year, you could look at this year's as a good example. If this year it was November 1st was the final application deadline, then that's going to give you a sense it's probably going to be similar. And you can also start researching on those graduate school websites. What are the components of those applications? So if you're thinking about an MBA program and that program requires a GMAT and their early decision application deadline is November 1, then you want to make sure you can take the GMAT and have your scores from the GMAT agency before November 1, right? So you can start building a timeline backwards. That's a great question.
Someone just asked, what is the GMAT/GRE?
Oh, yeah. So these are standardized tests. I don't know, maybe some of you took the SAT or the ACT when you were in high school, but the GMAT and GRE, so it's the graduate records exam, which is required for many graduate and PhD programs that are sort of non-business. The GMAT is the graduate management admissions test. And so typically business schools or MBA programs are going to be looking at that. If you're thinking about medical school, it might be the MCAT, which is the medical school exam. So they're standardized tests that are typically multiple choice. Some of them now have been able to incorporate essays into the exam platforms. So these are going to be standardized exams that schools may require or recommend test scores. And so you'll want to look at each individual school and each individual degree program you're thinking about to see what's required or recommended.
Okay. Um, Someone's kind of asking about, is there the possibility to skip a master's straight to a PhD in business straight out of undergraduate school?
That is a good question. I've never worked for an institution that had a doctorate degree in a business field. I don't know the answer. That's a great question. That's going to take a little research to see if you can go right into a PhD in operations or human resources or business systems. Yeah, you stumped me. Good job.
All right. We still got questions popping in here, so
Great.
I'm going to keep asking them. So, what's been the impact of AI slash data science on MBA education, and which programs are the strongest in this area?
That is a great question. I don't know which programs are the strongest. There are a lot of programs that are doing data science, and so you can do some quick Googling around to find some good programs. But the impact of AI on education has been huge. In fact, we're all grappling with, not only in the admissions process, but more importantly in the education process. So, our faculty are asking questions like, hey, why am I even requiring writing assignments when students can just generate something through AI? And so what we're really working on at the Middlebury community is teaching. We know AI is here to stay. We know students are going to use tools like ChatGPT for assignments. um, so how do we encourage and teach students to use it wisely and use it in a really smart way? So we're really working with our students on, learning how to ask great questions, but then analyze the results that you're getting. Um, you know, we've played in different class settings with having students ask questions and you get something from AI that's a total hallucination. But if the student hasn't really thought through that, they might just submit that as their answer. And, a faculty member is going to go, whoa, this doesn't, clearly the student didn't even read the text to make, to give us this response. So we're I would say in higher ed, we're grappling with how to train, how can we all learn how to use these tools ethically, effectively, and to enhance our work. So really learning how to ask those questions, but be very analytical in seeing the results that we're getting.
Yeah, yeah. I know as we work with AI here at Beta Gamma Sigma, it's always making sure that we're reading through the prompts that it is giving us, making sure that we're taking time to edit things and fact check. 'Cause it's really important to make sure. And I think those are really good skills that you were just talking about there.
Yeah.
Let's see here. So let's see. So, my major, this person asked, my major is in business administration with an emphasis in marketing management. I enjoy the marketing part, not as much as the business part of my major. I would not want to get my master's in, I would not want to get my master's in business, but what would you recommend?
Oh yeah, that's great. It's really good to start thinking about what you like and what you don't like in programs. I would say a couple of things. One, I would consider getting some work experience in between undergrad and graduate school. In fact, most business programs, most MBA programs are going to require work experience. Some of them have a very clear requirement. You've got to have 2 years of professional experience no matter what. It's going to vary program to program, but that's pretty common with business schools. But if so let's say you could get a marketing internship, or you could get a job in marketing, product marketing, social media marketing, some aspect of marketing, then you could really get into it and see, do I really love this? Which I think is a great idea before investing in any graduate or business program. But then you might say, yes, I love it. And in particular, I love the psychology behind it. So I'm going to find you could find a master's degree in marketing that really is looking at the psychology of marketing, or it could be the writing for marketing. So I think getting a little bit, maybe you have experience, I don't know, but getting some more experience that's kind of taking a deep dive into marketing, and then start to even get more granular about which aspects of marketing you really like, and then look for programs that are good fits for that in particular.
Yeah, perfect. Let's see. Any other questions, guys, before we close out the session? I really appreciate, honestly, all the questions that have come through. Really good. Really appreciate everybody participating and dropping some questions here in the chat and in the Q&A feature.
I just popped my email address into the chat. I'm happy to take questions about our programs, or just some more general kind of advice about applying to grad school or business school. And I just wish you a lot of luck. It's an exciting time in your lives to be thinking about what's next. If you're still in school, good luck with the wrap up of the semester. We're almost there. Um, and just take care. Good luck.
Thank you, Jill, very much for putting on this webinar and answering all these wonderful questions. I know they really appreciate you taking the time to come out here. And thank you very much from Beta Gamma Sigma for taking the time and working with us on this webinar.
Great. Bye, everyone.
Take care, everyone.